Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Tousi TV. We are going to be talking about this week. It's going to be a chaotic week across the United Kingdom. We're going to have elections, mayoral elections. Yeah, that's still going on. Obviously, a lot of people are focusing on London with Sadiq Khan and Susan Hall and all those other ones. But there are other mayoral campaigns that are still ongoing across England, specifically when it comes to West Midlands. And in this case, we're going to talk about Greater Manchester. We have another special guest with us. He's back on the channel. It's Nick Buckley. Hello, Nick.
Hello, and thank you for having me back on.
Yeah, well, I think it's important. We've got 2 days left till the mayoral elections in Greater Manchester, and you are the independent candidate. Although I did hear a couple of days ago, well, I think it was on one of these wishy-washy channels, whether it was GB News or Talk TV, they called you the Reform UK mayoral candidate. I was like, I don't think you are, but
I'm not.
no. So obviously you're fighting against Andy Burnham, but the reason I wanted to have you on the channel is because the latest opinion polls actually show that you're now almost at 10%, but you're neck and neck with which party? Hang on, let's bring it up again.
The Tories.
I know you're almost beating the Tories now. It is. I don't know what's going on anymore at this point, but it's a good sign for independent-minded candidates. While a lot of people are sick and tired of the main parties, I think it's good to send a message to the establishment. So you're almost beating the Tories now, and I mean at this point.
Well, according to the poll, I actually am beating the Tories. I'm beating the Greens, the Lib Dems, and I'm like 0.5% ahead of the Tories.
That's insane. So obviously Andy Burnham is going to win. I mean, unless some weird stuff happens. But that's not the point of this. This is about obviously doing a political shake-up, which you are doing, and other people like yourself across the country. First things first, what was the reception so far? Because obviously you've been going around talking to people in Greater Manchester. I'm guessing a lot of them are angry at the Tories, but are they actually loving the Labour Party, or what's going on?
It's the easiest way of saying it is they hate everybody. They hate all the parties. They hate the state of the country. I've only met one or two people who support Andy Burnham, but yet the polls suggest he's going to get 63% of the vote. Everybody hates the Tories. The Tories vote has actually collapsed in Greater Manchester for this election. Even though they stood no chance of winning anyway, it's still collapsed. People are just fed up. They're fed up. Even they say they're fed up with me. Nick, I know you're independent, but you're just going to be like the rest. If we gave you our vote, you're just going to be like everybody else, climbing that greasy pole, taking the money. And it's a sad state of affairs, the state of our country at the moment.
It is, but an independent candidate, almost depending on obviously how it goes, but on current numbers, becoming third, that is a little bit embarrassing for the establishment and all these parties that spent millions and millions of pounds every year on their parties and their campaigns up and down the country. But how do you think things are going to be changing in terms of will it put pressure on Andy Burnham if he wins again? Will they actually wake up and realize, well, we might have won because by default, a lot of people in certain areas, they look at the red rosette and the Labour Party, they just vote for them without thinking. But are they actually kind of going to wake up that, wow, let's look at what Nick Buckley did and many others, people are listening to them. Maybe we should change our policies, or do you think they're not going to change anything?
I don't think they'll change anything. And I don't think the problem are the people who vote Labour. We're a free country, you should be able to vote for who you want. The problem are the people who don't vote, which is 2/3 of the people in Greater Manchester. And we have to ask, why don't they vote? And they don't vote because we've ground them down over half a century, made them feel useless, made them feel like their voice doesn't matter and their opinion doesn't matter. Whoever can tap into those people are the people who will change this country.
It is true. There's also a point where a lot of people watching Tousi TV always say we need more independent candidates and more patriotic candidates, but they also say yes, but people are terrified of actually standing up because they'll get cancelled or whatever. You yourself have been obviously standing up for free speech, fighting against the far left, and even from the BLM days to now with all the Islamists. Do you have a message of hope for these people who want to be independent candidates or join smaller parties that don't worry, you won't get assassinated, or have you been almost assassinated?
Yeah, I mean, my advice would be the first 10 times you get called a racist hurts. But after 70 times, you don't even hear the insult anymore. And that's all you ever get is insults. So stand up, Join one of the small parties, being independent, speak from the heart. Do not bend. Do not start thinking to yourself, if I say this, this might be popular and gain me votes. Just be yourself, be honest, and then you always know you were truthful then. And I can die on my deathbed knowing I was truthful, even if I don't win anything. So the hurty words are hurty words. You do get used to it, and you get used to it a lot quicker than you imagine. And apart from that, just do it. You're an English man, you're an English woman. Just stand up and try to be the person our grandparents, our great great grandparents were. Be proud, be strong, be formidable, because you are formidable.
Yes, no, absolutely spot on. So obviously, for those in case haven't been following your campaign, especially those watching from Greater Manchester, what are your kind of the top messages, then top kind of ideas that you have, like top three, top five? What are
Yeah.
the priorities for Greater Manchester?
So my number one top priority is everybody's in the country, which is crime. Greater Manchester is becoming a violent hellhole. We're finding chopped up bodies now in local parks. Stabbings every day, almost murders almost every day. We've got kids like London stabbing each other to death on our streets and dying in pools of their own blood. It's not acceptable. So we need to get a grip of the policing. And how we get a grip of the policing is because the Mayor of Greater Manchester is also the Police Crime Commissioner. He's in charge of the police. He can do whatever he wants legally with the police. And that's what I'll be doing. Number two is I want you to keep your car. I'm sick of all this anti-car attacks, ULEZs, clean air zones, 15-minute cities, congestion charges, pay per mile. This all ends in Greater Manchester on day one. I'm pulling down the canvas. We're not having it. I want my car. You should keep your car. Then let's look at council tax. I'm going to reduce the council tax bill for everybody in Greater Manchester. I can't affect what the councils take off you, because that's independent. But on your bill now is an extra section now, what the mayor takes off you. That will come down from day one, and I'm going to try to get it as close to zero as possible. We pay far too much tax in this country, and the services are getting worse and worse and worse. So more money isn't the answer to our problems. And then let's look at the position of mayor by itself. Nobody in Greater Manchester voted for a mayor. We were never asked. It was forced upon us a decade ago. And many people tell me they're not voting because why would I vote for something I was never asked for in the first place? So we have a hole in our democracy here. So I'm going to tick that box by going to the people and giving them a referendum if they want to keep or get rid of the position of mayor. And whatever they say, I will then enact. And my third point is everything's failing, isn't it, across the country and in Greater Manchester? And the reason why it's failing is we never hold anyone accountable. I'm going to be looking at the councils, the NHS, probation, everything tax funded in Greater Manchester. And the top civil servants running those departments, I'm going to name and shame on TV. I'll ruin some of their careers, but the benefit out of this will be other people will go, I need to start doing a better job, because that mental mayor of ours will mention me on the BBC, and I'm not prepared to have that done. So therefore, this department will improve. We will start delivering a better service. We will stop wasting taxpayers' money. And they're my five priorities for Greater Manchester. Nothing amazing, no big spending, no big projects. I want to fix the foundations.
I mean, apart from the naming shaming the bad civil servants, which is kind of a fun policy, it's actually very important as well. The best one is actually is your East Germany Berlin Wall moment, where you're going to bring down the cameras. That's going to be good. I mean, it's also very important for it's not just symbolic; it's also on a practical level. That's a sign that everybody else in the country, all these other counties and cities, are going to realize that if you do it, for example, or if a new mayor does it, and people who elected that mayor actually also support it and celebrate, then other people in the country will wake up, and then they'll put pressure on their own mayors, for example.
Exactly.
One thing I want to say is a lot of people don't really know much about certain details of governance in this country, including what you said about on top of council tax that goes to council. In big cities, you also pay the mayor's office, but they still call it the council tax, which is a little bit misleading. I think there should also be a policy, again, that's kind of more central government side, Treasury. We need the Chancellor to also clarify that, so people know when they get the pay slip and everything else at the end of the year as well. When you look at the back of it, and he's got the obviously the graph with how much of your money is being sent out elsewhere. People need to know that this is not just one tax. This is basically two taxes on top of each other. So you got the council tax and you got the mayoral tax. And I think if people find out, they might revolt, right?
Absolutely. I mean, have you ever met anybody who said, do you know what, Maya? What we need is more politicians, more bureaucracy, and I'm willing to pay for that with my taxes. No one's ever said that in the history of the world, but yet we hide the council tax increase for the mayor's office. We hide it in the council tax bill. I mean, when you read it, it actually says it in it. But who sits down to read the nitty gritty of their council tax bill? Not even I don't do that.
Yeah, that's very true. You were talking about obviously the beginning of the interview about you and based on the current numbers, you'll be the third candidate in terms of this election, which is fascinating as an independent candidate. A lot of people obviously do talk about how we need more independent-minded people, independent candidates everywhere. But when the time comes, they always. I mean, we are primarily talking about either right-leaning or patriotic people in the country. They come and say these are the supporters of the more mainstream parties like Reform UK or the Tories. They say, well, yeah, I know we did say we need someone like Nick Buckley, but now that the election's here, Nick, can you stand aside and vote Tory or Reform? Have you had that recently, obviously going around Greater Manchester or even online? And what's your opinion on this mentality? People say we want independent, but then when the time comes, they just go back to the normal voting.
Yeah, they do. I've not had it with the Tories because the Tories have collapsed in Greater Manchester. I've had it with Reform. People saying, oh, we've got Nick standing and a Reform candidate standing. Can't they work together? Well, we could have worked together. I've been campaigning for 15 months, trying to get Reform to endorse me. And then 2 weeks before the election deadline, they announced a candidate who was actually the Tory. Yeah, who was actually the Tory candidate. So the Tory candidate defected to Reform and then stood for Reform. So
what's the difference in Reform and Tories now at this point?
The colour of their rosettes, that's basically it. And I don't blame him for that. This is politics. Yeah. People can do what they want. I'm not complaining. But people will, I mean, this is why I say to people all the time, stop voting for the lesser of two evils. Because when you think about it, you're still voting for evil. Vote for the future you want to see. Now, if that is Conservative or that's Labour or that's Reform, well, vote for them. If you truly believe what they're selling you is what you want, well, vote for them. Vote for the people who give you some aspiration and give you a dream of tomorrow. Don't vote for quick fixes because none of us can fix your problems in a couple of years. You should be looking at who can fix the problems for your grandchildren today. That's what you should be voting for. Vote for the future. Don't vote for the lesser of two evils because you're still voting for evil.
I agree. I used to have a more jokey conversation with friends recently, saying, if I were king and had power, I would force the next election or maybe the next one. I will force any candidates, parliamentary candidates, to not be an existing MP. Every existing MP should be out, just kind of start fresh. But jokes aside, I would advise those who want to start new political parties or whatever. To try your best not to have existing politicians from other parties affected, because if you get so many of them, your party is now that party. And you might think you were getting some of the good people. Fair enough, but the psyche is the same thing. They're bringing the same mentality. You need fresh people. When the Labour Party started over 100 years ago, they didn't go around knocking on the doors of the Liberals saying, do you want to join our party? No, they just created their own candidates and they destroyed the Liberal Party and they replaced the Liberal Party as a second party. I know they were commies, but still. There are enough differences in the country and also having things in common, which is kind of interesting. We have more in common without realizing, but differences to actually have enough variety of different types of politics. Whilst I'm still on the side of Margaret Thatcher, but I know times have changed, but she did say at the time, at least, the way the House of Commons sits in this country, British politics and the appetite we have could easily be serviced by two parties. Not two-party system, but top two party. You can have two parties, centre left, centre right. But what she meant was, as long as you have this party and the other party being big tents, but different from each other, she didn't mean that the Labour Party and Tories would be the same, and then we'd just be happy about it. And so I think we can have, let's call it this side and that side, not red or blue, not Tory and Labour, just two parties. You can actually have all the differences between in each tent, but having common. Or even right now, because everybody's the same, you can actually create a new party. If you want to create a party, anybody watching this, and get fresh people who have not been politicians from any other political party, right?
Yeah, I think what you're discussing there is the difference between conviction politicians and career politicians.
Yeah.
So a career politician is someone who will say, I don't care what party I'm a member of, as long as I can climb that greasy pole. A conviction politician says, I'm here for these things. These are my ideas. I'm not for changing. I don't care the public don't like these, or you tell me they don't, because this is what I want to do. And we seem to have heavily lent towards career politicians now. We've got a Tory member of Parliament last week who's now jumped to Labour. We've got Tory politicians jumping to Reform. If you think the answer is a new party filled with the people who are running the old parties, then that's absolutely crazy. If we're going to start new parties, we need new people in them with new ideas. We don't need the people who ruined the country and ruined these old parties to come into our new parties. You don't get change like that. You get more of the same.
My favorite part about the story you mentioned, the Tory MP defecting to Labour the other day, was nobody knew and nobody cared. Like, usually it should be a big story. Like, oh, wow, defection from a big party to another big party. Nobody even knew who he was, and nobody really cared because they're both the same now. And it's so, because I think people consciously and subconsciously see them as career politicians more than before.
Yeah.
They're not surprised. They're like, oh, well, he's still wearing a suit. I mean, that's just as a metaphor. And he'll still look the same. It doesn't really matter. If you see him on the street and he says, I'm an MP, we can't guess if he's Labour or Tory anyway. So they can't tell the difference these days. So I think that was an interesting point. But we are where we are now. And I think this election is interesting. Because the London elections have changed. The mayoral election is now first past the post. Is it the same with Greater Manchester? Or is it still second round and stuff like that?
No, the Tories changed it, so all mayor elections now are first past the post.
It's like the Tories want to lose all these elections. Why would you change it to first past the post? That was the only chance the Tories had to win London or even Greater Manchester, was to have first round, second round, because obviously Sadiq Khan now could win because of first past the post. But because back then he needed more than 50%, like Andy Burnham now in Greater Manchester.
Yeah.
But now he's about 40-ish, 45%, or maybe less, I think, 43%. So if there was a second round, Susan Hall could technically beat him, but now he's going to win. So thanks to the Tories, Sadiq Khan is going to stay as mayor, right?
The Tories have no idea what they're doing and haven't for 14 years. So this is no surprise to me that they've changed the system to damage themselves. It doesn't surprise me. They've been damaging the country for 14 years.
I know. I mean, and I would say, for example, at least the first 2-3 years, they knew what they were doing, at least in terms of, because they were career politicians, but they had the expertise, like people like George Osborne and David Cameron. Their mentality was to bring stability, and they believed in stability. And then relatively that worked. For the first 2-3 years, 4 years, until 2015 election, they did that. But then they forgot about the need of the people. So, for example, Nigel Farage had to force them to do the referendum. Otherwise, they wouldn't have even put it on any manifesto. They didn't, and that was just one thing. Brexit was just one example. They were not listening to the needs and wants of the people. So that basically what happened 5 years after that, 10 years after that, which is now. And now they're surprised. Oh, why are things not working? Because you didn't listen back then. Doesn't matter who your leader was. It's still the same party, same mentality. But it's fascinating because I still see these Tories when I go out in London, in central London, even in pubs in Westminster. I talk to them and they fascinate me. And these are the younger ones and also middle-aged ones who work as special advisors and work in Parliament. They are still so smug that firstly they think that they know everything, and secondly it's everybody else's fault that things are not working. But I can assure you, if I had a time machine, go back to 2009 and talk to some of the people working for Gordon Brown's team, I don't think even they will be that smug when the new Labour government is going down in 2010 compared to these guys. I think even they accepted that Labour government was old and tired. I think these guys still don't get it.
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. This is a huge part of the problem. These people you've been speaking to, these politicians, these special advisors, what they really mean is, we're better than you in every single way. We're better than you. If we could have more power over you in your lives, everything would be better. It's people like you who are ruining our policies. It's people like you, the voter, who are ruining this country because you won't do as you're told. We know better than you. I'm better educated than you. I've been to Oxford. I've been to Cambridge. My daddy was an earl, or my dad is a millionaire. We're just better than you. Just do as you're told. And it's that way of thinking and believing that's got us into this mess.
Well, the thing is, there's one tiny difference. At least there was a point, even until 10 years ago, with the young David Cameron types. So they still existed. There was still a big chunk of the Tory party where, like, these private school kids, boarding school kids, fair enough, and they were entitled, right? But now we have a bigger problem with the Tories, with all these younger ones. They're not even the old money establishment. I would respect that, at least. I'm like, well, it's not your fault. You were born into yourself entitled. These are the kids who they took advantage of what, for example, Thatcherism did and everything else. So they created opportunities. They are new money, and they went to grammar school. But some of these grammar school kids are more smug than the private school kids. It's a big problem now. So they don't actually have anything, but they're still self-entitled. And they work in Westminster. They haven't had a real job. They just worked in Westminster from university, and they went to a generic good university from the grammar school. And now their lives, they live in a tiny flat in Pimlico, for example, but on the surface, they go out and hang out, all these Westminster events and, champagne and caviar. It's an illusion of power. It's an illusion of that upper class kind of a lifestyle where even people like J.K.B. Smog, when they were younger, they didn't show off. They didn't really go around saying, look at me and look at the way I walk and the way I talk or whatever. They were more humble than these guys. Yeah. I think that's the whole different problem that we're currently facing. But yeah.
These people have no life experience. They're brought up in a bubble. They live in a bubble and they work in this bubble. They have no understanding of the real world. And it's a cliche to say they've got, they don't know how much a pint of milk is. That's a cliche, but they don't understand how normal people feel, how they live their lives. And that disconnect from the general public is why we keep getting poor policies and why we have mass immigration, because they're just looking at figures on a spreadsheet going, oh, this makes this spreadsheet look pretty good. But they forget about people's lives. And that I would rather be a poorer country if everybody in the country was slightly happier and more content. I'd rather be poorer. But we don't have that anymore. We just seem to have depression and anxiety because nothing seems to work and no one knows their place in society anymore. And then what their future is and their children's future. I'd rather be poorer and be happier.
No, absolutely. So there was a point about, because you mentioned poorer, Sir Michael Caine, during the Brexit campaign said about the EU and being independent, I mean, the same applies. He said, I would rather be a poor master than a rich servant. And that was a very good point. But the Tories aside, there's also the other side. The more fascinating part is the Labour Party, because since New Labour and Tony Blair, they've also have the same type of people going in them. And it's funny because they all look the same. Genuinely, all these young Labour people, they all have these like tight trousers and jeans. They all have glasses like Harry Potter. They all have the like checkered shirts. They all look exactly the same. They all walk the same. But even when Jeremy Corbyn came and they claimed that the party's now gone back to working class socialist roots, people around Jeremy Corbyn were all posh kids. They all went to private school. So what happened to the party of Clement Attlee? I don't understand. What is the point of Labour when they can't even represent the working class because they insult the working class? And I don't want to sound like one of these people who say, oh, working class, they go always back to working class, because that's also patronising. You don't have to just be a party of working class. Just be a party of everybody, right?
Yeah. Let me answer that by asking you a question. What's the difference between the managers of Tesco's and the managers of Asda?
I'm going to guess one of them.
Yeah, there isn't any differences because they're just jobs. They're just middle manager jobs. And that's all our politicians are. And that's all their special advisors are. They're just middle managers because they don't believe in anything they say. Most politicians don't even believe in their policies. They get told their policies. And if they want to stay in the party, these are the policies you push. Most politicians I know don't believe what they're pushing. It's their job to push them. We need to get away from party politics. That's what's killing us, and get back to individuals. I'm voting for this person because I like the individual. He speaks sense. He can relate to me. But they're all just middle managers now.
I think the problem that you point out correctly is actually the whole society. The way the modern society works is all jobs and all individuals just becoming parts of the machine in a sense that
Yeah.
whether you're in business or politics or teacher or whatever, there's no individuality in a sense that, and but it doesn't encourage creativity either. So they're all basically the same reason that all the other middle management in corporate companies are also the same. Whereas back in the day, even in the world of business or in politics, you had creators, you had innovators. You had, for example, in politics, you had people like Winston Churchill who were poetic and they had the world view. They were imagining, well, they could imagine a better world, for example. They could
Yeah.
actually think about being creative and visualize and everything. But even in America, we had a number of U.S. presidents back in the day who and again, it's not really, oh, you have to be an artist, and not necessarily for that reason, or you have to be a poet, but they were thinkers, for example. Even in business, as I said, we had back in the day more inventors and more creators and more innovators. Whereas now, the society we were kind of living in, it kind of encourages you to just be, to just
Mm.
do what everybody else does. So whether you're in politics or business or whatever you're doing, and even the world of influencers and this social media stuff, they're all also becoming the same. They're all repeating the same trend. At the beginning of it, everybody was creative. Oh, I'm going to start this new trend and selfie and all that, and everyone's now copying each other.
Yeah.
So there's no individuality, there's no creativity, and we wonder why people are getting sick and tired because people who are living in smaller towns and villages, they're still living a more traditional life where they are independent minded, and they're looking at like, why is everybody the same in cities?
Yeah. I mean, the blob, the machine of politics, is afraid of change because that's the golden goose for them. So they don't want change. They don't mind control change and manage change.
Mm,
And a good example would be that I am the only independent standing out of 6 candidates. And I'm the only one who wasn't invited onto the BBC debate. I'm the only one who wasn't invited onto the Manchester News debate for mayor. And the reason they gave me was we don't invite independents. And I thought to myself, well, not only is that unfair, but there must be a reason. And the reason is I'm different. I'm not going to repeat the same mantras everybody else repeats. I'm going to challenge people. I'm going to challenge the BBC. I've got different ideas that they can't control, and they should be afraid of me. I am a danger to them. I'm a danger to the establishment. I am. And because of that, they don't want you to have a voice. And it's through fear of change, because the golden goose rewards them.
Well, it makes no sense because back in the day, I mean, until now, the argument made sense from the mainstream media's perspective, saying we only invite candidates or parties that are doing well. But you're now third, you're beating the Tories, so by default, you should be invited as well anyway. But that aside, there is a point about not wanting us, because before I had Tousi TV, and I was just back in the day, I was just making social media videos, just posting
Yeah.
on Twitter or Facebook. They loved me. They kept inviting me, BBC and Sky and all of them. The moment my channel became successful, and actually, objectively speaking, I became better. I became better at speaking and debating. They didn't want me. Like, oh, no. You no longer, well, either you're not one of us or we can't treat you in a patronizing way, saying, oh, hello, little person, would you like to come on the BBC for 5 minutes? Because they want to be able to be the master and you be the servant. But we are where we are. So, what do you think? Obviously, the next couple of days, you still got to be knocking on doors, right? For the next day or two.
Not necessarily knocking on doors. I'm spending this time now on social media. I need to reach the people who have got no intentions of going out voting. Most people have made their mind up now, but the people who don't go out to vote, I'm trying to reach them on TikTok. I'm trying to reach them on Facebook, because they're my secret weapon if I can get to them. So that's where my time is being spent.
Yeah, it's important, I think, and obviously you're probably already doing it. But one of the key points is also anyone existing person or voter that you've talked to or is already in touch with you, just remind them to
Yeah,
talk on your behalf to their neighbors and
yeah,
everybody else, because that's also very important. That's how I did Twisted TV. I said, if you're a subscriber, just get your neighbors and friends and enemies, everybody to subscribe. So
yeah,
I think that's the best we can do. But I will see, because I think, well, the London election is going to be exciting, because anything could happen still technically. Even
yeah,
though we think City could win, but I'm also going to keep an eye on your election, because I just want then the numbers to be good. That's all I care about. Even if you don't
yeah,
win, it's going to be exciting. You beat the Tories and the Greens and Lib Dems and all of
yeah.
them. and then you become the top three, top two candidates. It will send a big message to the establishment. Any last few words?
I'm only 2 points away from second place. So
Literally, yeah.
second place is doable for me. If the polls
Yeah.
are right, Andy Burnham's going to win by a big majority. But if I can come second, that shows the country change can come.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Nick Buckley. And if you're watching from Greater Manchester, don't forget to vote for Nick Buckley and spread the message. I'm Tousi, and we are the media.